Alien girl saves human from a reactor surge, but human sees the core mirror her exact shape. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The alarm started as a low tremor under Evan Grant's boots, a vibration that crawled up the steel grating and into his ribs. Then the sirens hit full force, red strobes pulsing against the narrow reactor hallway, painting everything in frantic flashes of color. A blast of overheated air struck his face as another conduit hissed open, bleeding white steam into the corridor. He wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his glove. Great, he muttered, checking the handheld gauge strapped to his wrist. Voltage spike. Temperature rising past safe levels. Containment shields flickering like dying fireflies. One more surge, and the whole power bay would lock down. Hard. Evan pushed forward, boots clanging, breath sharp in his ears. He wasn't a soldier, never claimed to be. He was maintenance, wrenches, patch kits, and too many double shifts. But the ship needed him, and right now the reactor was calling his name whether he liked it or not. A thin line of sparks rained from an overhead relay. He ducked, felt the heat kiss the top of his helmet, and slid the last few feet toward the manual override panel. He popped the casing open. Inside, the wiring glowed an angry orange. "Come on," he whispered. "Stay with me." The deck lurched. A pressure wave shoved him sideways, knocking tools from his belt. He grabbed a railing, heart hammering. That wasn't just vibration. That was the core taking a breath it wasn't supposed to take. And then he heard it. Footsteps. Fast. Precise. Not human. Evan turned just as a blue figure burst through the thinning steam. Kayla RHYSS. Tall, steady, her skin shimmering like frost lit from beneath, moved with the grace of someone born in higher gravity. She didn't hesitate. She reached him in 2 strides, her voice low and firm. "Move." Before Evan could protest, she pulled him clear of the panel just as a hot plume of energy flared where he had been kneeling. The air sizzled. Evan stared, stunned. "You shouldn't be here." Kayla didn't answer right away. Her gaze swept the corridor, assessing damage, calculating risks with a calmness Evan envied. "Your readings were erratic," she finally said. "I followed the heat trail." Another rumble shook the floor. She braced a hand on the wall, keeping them both upright. Evan forced a breath. He didn't understand why she helped. Kayla was technically a detainee, a warrior from a species humans barely trusted. But right now, she was the only thing standing between him and a shutdown he wouldn't walk away from. "Thanks," he said quietly. Kayla met his eyes for a brief second, something unreadable flickering there. Then the core roared again, deeper this time, as if warning them both. Evan swallowed hard. The day was only getting started. Kayla steadied herself as the reactor hummed louder, a low pulse running through the metal floor like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Evan felt it too. The air had changed, carrying a faint ozone scent and a warmth that did not belong in a controlled chamber. He glanced at her, noticing the faint shimmer along her skin as the emergency lights washed over her blue tone. She looked calm, but Evan knew enough to recognize tension when he saw it. "The surge is climbing," he said, checking the gauge on his wrist. The numbers climbed in steady increments, each one a warning he did not want to hear. Kayla stepped closer to the exposed panel, her eyes narrowing slightly as she examined the flickering readouts. "The auxiliary regulator is lagging. If it falls more than 5 seconds behind the core, the containment field loses stability." Evan rubbed a hand across his jaw, his pulse picking up. 5 seconds is nothing in this system. "Exactly why you should not be in here alone," she replied. Her tone was even, not harsh, just certain. Another tremor rippled through the corridor, making the loose tools on the deck buzz softly. Kayla crouched by the panel, her movements precise, almost gentle, as if she understood the machine's language better than any blueprint could teach. Evan watched her fingertips hover over the manual conduit. "Do not touch that," he warned. "It is running hot." She tilted her head. "Hot for you, not for me." Before he could argue, she pressed her palm against the outer housing. Evan expected her to pull back, but instead she closed her eyes briefly, as if listening to something beneath the surface. When she spoke again, her voice was low. The surge pattern is inconsistent. It is not mechanical failure. Something inside the core is reacting. Evan frowned. Reacting to what? Kayla stood, brushing her hand lightly against her thigh. That is what concerns me. A soft chime echoed through the hallway, a signal that always made Evan's stomach tighten. That is Sector 2 warming, he said. If it reaches Sector 3, the ship initiates a full lockdown. Kayla gave him a small, steady nod. Then we stabilize it before that happens. She turned down the corridor, expecting him to follow. Evan hesitated only a second before grabbing his toolkit and jogging after her. The two moved quickly, their footsteps ringing against the narrow metal walkway. Steam hissed from an overhead valve, causing Evan to duck instinctively. Kayla reached up and shut the valve with a quick twist, her expression unreadable. Your systems rely on pressure lines that run too close to the heat channels, she observed. It is a flawed design. Tell the engineers, Evan muttered. I am just the guy who patches it back together. She glanced over her shoulder at him. You are more than that. You came in here knowing the risk. He shrugged, though her words hit something in him he did not expect. Someone had to. They reached the Sector 2 access point, its heavy door humming with static from the rising temperature. Evan keyed in his override, sweat tracing a line down the side of his face as the panel beeped in protest. Kayla watched him, her calm presence grounding in the chaos. When the door finally slid open, a wave of warm air rolled out, carrying a faint glow from deep within the chamber, a glow that pulsed as if alive. Kayla inhaled slowly, her expression shifting in a way Evan could not read. The core is changing, she whispered. Evan followed her gaze and saw the glow pulse again, brighter this time. Something about it felt wrong. Or maybe not wrong, just unfamiliar. Then we change it back, he said quietly. Kayla nodded once, her eyes steady on the shifting light ahead. Together, they stepped inside. The chamber lights flickered as Evan and Kayla stepped onto the graded platform overlooking the inner regulator shafts. The glow ahead was brighter now, a steady pulse rising from the reactor throat, painting the metal walls in shifting patterns of blue and white. Evan felt the warmth roll across his face, not scorching but unnaturally soft, almost like a gentle draft from a heated vent. Kayla paused beside him, her eyes fixed on the core as if she recognized the rhythm hiding in its light. It is responding to something, she murmured. This pattern is not random. Evan checked his wrist gauge again, watching the numbers climb in slow increments. Temperature is still going up, he said. We have maybe 10 minutes before the ship gets nervous and shuts everything down. Kayla stepped closer to the railing. Her skin reflected the glow, the shimmer deepening as the pulses synchronized with her breath. Evan noticed the match instantly. Kayla exhaled. The core pulsed. It happened again, softer this time, as if the reactor were waiting for her. Okay, Evan whispered. That is strange. Kayla placed a hand on the railing, her voice leveled despite the rising tension. My species interacts with energy differently, but this is not a normal response. Evan moved to the secondary control panel, fingers flying over the analog switches. The screen refreshed, showing a wave pattern that curved upward in a shape he had never seen. This cannot be right, he said. It looks like the core is echoing something, almost like a silhouette. Kayla turned to him, her expression thoughtful. Silhouette of what? You, he said before he could second-guess it. She blinked, not offended, just curious. Show me. Evan angled the monitor toward her. The pulse lines curved into a narrow waist, then rose to wider shoulders. The signature was unmistakable. Kayla studied it with a calm Evan did not feel. Energy can mimic physical forms if it is exposed to a strong enough imprint, she said quietly. It usually requires deliberate contact. Evan shook his head. You never touched the core. Not physically, she said. But energy does not always need touch. A soft tremor rolled under their feet. The chamber vibrated gently, like a hum through the hull. Evan steadied himself, gripping the railing. We need to bring it back to baseline before it climbs any higher, he said. Kayla nodded and stepped closer to the maintenance access hatch at the side of the platform. If we reroute the auxiliary feed, we can give the system something predictable to follow. It may break the imprint. Evan opened the hatch, revealing a narrow conduit with glowing cables. Warm air drifted out, brushing against his face. I will guide the lines, he said, leaning in. You keep an eye on the regulator. Kayla knelt beside him, her presence steady and grounded. Tell me what you need. Evan's hands moved carefully through the conduit, adjusting the connectors. Each movement sent a soft vibration through the system. Kayla watched the readouts shift, her voice low and steady as she relayed the changes. Pressure dropping 1 point, she said. Hold that. Evan tightened a coupler, feeling the response immediately as the conduit warmed under his palm. Flow stabilizing, Kayla added. But the core is still mirroring. Then we need one more adjustment, Evan said. A clean signal. Something neutral. Kayla rose slowly, her gaze locking onto the glowing heart of the reactor. Neutral may not be enough, she whispered. If it is mirroring me, it is waiting for clarity. Evan looked up at her. Then we give it clarity. Kayla stepped toward the edge of the platform, her expression steady, her breath sinking once more with the pulsing light. Evan watched the glow shift with her presence, responding as if it knew her. The moment stretched thin, almost fragile, the hum of the reactor deepening around them as she lifted her hand slightly toward the radiance below. The glow from the reactor deepened as Kayla lifted her hand, the light bending toward her in a slow, fluid motion as if it recognized her presence. Evan felt the air shift again, a warm current drifting across the platform, carrying a soft vibration that made the metal under their boots hum like a distant chord. Kayla kept her gaze fixed on the pulsing light. Her voice was calm, steady. It is listening. Evan swallowed, watching the monitor on his wrist shift in small, deliberate waves that synchronized with her breathing. If it is listening, then maybe we can tell it what to do, he said. Guide it back. She nodded slightly. Energy follows intention. At least, in the systems my people build. This is a human system, Evan reminded her, though his voice held more hope than doubt. Human systems adapt, she replied softly. Sometimes more than expected. Evan stepped beside her, careful not to get too close to the edge. The reactor chamber opened beneath them, a deep shaft lined with steel ribs that caught the blue glow like reflections on water. The core itself was hidden behind layers of containment plating, but its light leaked through the seams in rhythmic pulses. Kayla took a slow breath. The core answered. Evan watched her face, noting the faint tension in her jaw and the delicate shift of her expression as she concentrated. What are you doing? He asked quietly. Offering clarity, she said. A steady rhythm for it to follow. Like a metronome? Evan asked. Yes. Simple. Predictable. Intentional. He checked the readings again. To his surprise, the waveform was already smoothing out, the once chaotic lines bending toward a symmetrical pattern. It is working, he said. Kayla kept her hand raised, her tone even. The core is aligning. Another warm pulse rolled outward. The air brightened, and for a moment Evan felt a gentle pressure, not painful, just present, as if something brushed past him. Kayla felt it too. Her eyes flicked to the glow. It is projecting, she said, trying to shape the energy into something familiar. The lights surged again, not dangerously but with purpose. Evan glanced at the reflection shimmering off the inner plating. The shape forming in the glow was unmistakable. Shoulders. A curve. A silhouette matching Kayla's outline with surprising precision. It really is mirroring you, he said softly. Kayla lowered her hand slightly, not breaking focus. It is imprinting. Not dangerous, but unusual. How do we stop it? Evan asked. We do not, she said. We redirect it. Evan moved to the manual regulator beside her. Tell me how. She nodded toward the control housing. Open the upper gate. Give the core a stable output stream. If it can release the excess energy smoothly, it will stop seeking shape. Got it, Evan said. He unlatched the housing and pulled the lever. The reactor answered instantly with a low, soft hum, the kind he associated with a stable cycle. The glow eased, no longer reaching outward in fitful pulses, but settling into a calm, steady rhythm. Kayla exhaled, lowering her hand fully. The mirrored shape faded from the light, dissolving into soft waves of blue. Evan felt the tension drain from the air. Even the floor beneath them seemed relieved. You stabilized it, Evan said, shaking his head in disbelief. Kayla's expression softened. We stabilized it. Evan glanced at her, feeling a moment of quiet connection settle between them, the hum of the reactor now gentle and warm around them. The crisis had not passed completely, but for the first time since the alarm sounded, the ship felt calm. "Come on," Evan said quietly. "Let us check the next set of readings." Kayla nodded, still watching the soft glow below them as if listening for anything the core might whisper back. The reactor's steady hum followed them as they moved down the narrow maintenance walkway, the glow behind them fading into a calmer blue. Evan kept his wrist gauge lifted, watching the numbers drop degree by degree. It was the first good sign he had seen since the alarm started. Kayla walked beside him, her posture relaxed but her eyes still alert, listening to the faint vibrations that ran through the metal like distant echoes. "The core is settling," Evan said. "Temperature is down 4 points." Kayla nodded. "It will keep lowering if the release channels stay open." The walkway curved, opening into a wider chamber where auxiliary displays flickered weakly against the walls. The lights here were dimmer, softened to a warm glow by the settling systems. Evan set his toolkit on a nearby console and tapped the main screen. A diagnostic overlay appeared, revealing the slow drop in pressure throughout the reactor column. "Looks stable," he murmured. Kayla stepped closer, reading the pattern with quiet focus. "The core is following a steady rhythm now. It is not seeking a shape anymore." Evan glanced at her. "Do you know why it chose your shape in the first place?" Her expression shifted, thoughtful. "Energy often mirrors the strongest imprint in its field. That chamber was flooded with reactive ions. Something in me resonated with it. Maybe it saw you as steady," Evan said without thinking. Kayla tilted her head slightly, her tone soft. "Or maybe it simply recognized something familiar." Evan did not know what she meant by that, but the words lingered. A soft chime sounded overhead, signaling that the ship's monitoring systems were recalibrating. The lights steadied. The vibration in the floor eased into a gentle thrum. For the first time, the room felt almost peaceful. Kayla walked toward a side console, brushing dust from its display before activating it. A faint hologram flickered to life, showing a wireframe representation of the core. "Your ships are built with impressive resilience," she said. "It takes a great deal to unsettle a system this layered." Evan chuckled under his breath. "Tell that to the engineering leads. They complain about this model every week." Kayla looked over at him. "Yet you come running when it calls for help." Evan shrugged, though the truth was simpler. Someone has to care for it. Machines fall apart without attention. Kayla considered that. "On my world, we say the same about people." He met her gaze, and for a moment the hum of the reactor felt distant, replaced by a quiet connection settling between them. Then the overhead speaker crackled, a faint burst of static. Evan tapped the side of the panel until the audio cleared. A calm artificial voice filled the chamber. "Reactor surge contained. Containment field stable. All crew may resume normal operations." Evan exhaled in relief. Kayla gave a small nod, acknowledging the success but not celebrating it. "There is still more to check," she said. "The core may be stable, but the imprint was unusual. It could mean something more." Evan packed a few tools back into his kit. "What kind of something?" She folded her arms, her expression turning inward. It felt intentional, not just a reaction to stress. Evan paused, the handle of the toolbox in his hand. "You think the core tried to communicate?" "Energy does not speak in words," Kayla said quietly. "But sometimes it reaches. Sometimes it listens. And sometimes it shows us what it sees." Evan fell silent, his thoughts shifting as he looked back toward the chamber they had come from. The glow had faded, but the image of the mirrored silhouette lingered in his mind. Kayla stepped beside him, her presence grounding. "Come," she said. "We should confirm all readings. The core may reveal more if we listen carefully." Evan nodded, feeling a subtle change in the air. Not danger. Something else. Understanding. They walked deeper into the maintenance sector together, the soft hum of the reactor following like a whisper from the ship's heart. The deeper they walked into the maintenance sector, the quieter the ship became. The alarms had stopped, the emergency lights had steadied, and only the soft hum of the reactor followed them like a gentle heartbeat. Evan felt the shift immediately. Without the chaos of failing systems, the corridors felt almost too still, as if the ship itself was listening. Kayla paused at a junction where the walkway branched toward the interior diagnostics hub. Her eyes flicked over the dim lights embedded in the walls. "This section is cooler," she said. "The energy flow is balanced again." Evan checked his wrist gauge. The numbers held steady for the first time all day. Looks like Sector 4 is behaving, he said. At least for now. Kayla tilted her head, sensing something he could not. The core is calm, but it is still aware. Evan almost laughed. Aware. Not alive, she clarified. But reactive. Sensitive. It responded to me earlier. It might do so again. Evan slowed his stride, thinking. Do you think that is a good thing? Kayla folded her hands behind her back as she walked. Energy does not choose sides. It follows resonance. But the fact that it mirrored my form suggests it reached for familiarity. You mean it recognized you? Evan said. Kayla considered this, her expression unreadable. Possibly. Or it recognized something in my energy field. My species harmonizes with certain frequencies differently. Evan thought of the way the core pulsed in sync with her breath. It had been too precise to be an accident. They reached the diagnostics hub, a small circular room filled with transparent screens that buzzed to life when Kayla stepped inside. Her presence seemed to activate the sensors more quickly than usual. Evan raised an eyebrow. It likes you more than it likes me. I doubt that, she said, though a faint curve touched her lips. She moved to the central display, her fingers grazing the illuminated interface. A projection formed above the console, a three-dimensional waveform of the reactor's current output. But this reading looked different. The pulse was smoother, yes, but there was something else woven into its pattern. A second rhythm, faint but present. Kayla leaned closer. There, she said softly. Do you see it? Evan squinted. That smaller wave. It is following a secondary pattern, Kayla said. Almost like a response. Evan frowned. But nothing is feeding into it. We shut down all external inputs. Then it is not external, Kayla said. It is internal. A reflection of the earlier imprint. Evan shifted his weight, suddenly, aware that the atmosphere felt heavier, almost denser. So the core is still holding onto your signature. Kayla did not step back. She watched the projection with a quiet intensity. Not holding, she said. Echoing. Like a memory. Evan felt a chill slide down his spine. Why would a reactor remember anything? Kayla glanced at him. Because something in the energy field formed a connection. Maybe brief, but strong. Evan shook his head. This is an industrial power system, not a living archive. And yet, Kayla said gently, gesturing toward the projection, it remembers the shape. The smaller wave pulsed again, faint but unmistakable. Evan felt the hum of the ship shift, almost like acknowledgement. He stepped beside Kayla, staring at the floating lines of light. So what does it want? Kayla's voice softened. Energy does not want, but it reflects what it is given. Evan looked at her, realizing something. Then maybe it is reflecting you because you gave it something steady. Kayla held his gaze for a quiet moment, then turned back to the projection. We should continue the diagnostics, she said. There may be more echoes in the outer layers. Evan grabbed his tools and nodded. But as they began scanning the auxiliary currents, he could not shake the feeling that the ship had learned something from her. Something it was not ready to release. The diagnostics hub dimmed for a moment as the reactor's hum shifted, a subtle tremor rolling through the deck plates like a quiet breath the ship had not intended to take. Evan's eyes snapped to the ceiling lights, watching them flicker once before stabilizing. That was not part of the recalibration, he said. Kayla stood very still, her eyes half closed as if listening to something beyond the ship's metal skin. It is the core, she said. The echo is growing stronger. Evan checked the readings. The secondary waveform had increased in amplitude, no longer faint, no longer hiding behind the main pulse. It rose and fell with a clarity that made the hairs on his arms lift. This should not be happening, he whispered. The system is supposed to discharge excess energy, not hold on to it. Kayla moved toward the nearest corridor, her steps quiet, controlled. The core is not holding it. It is reaching again. Evan felt an uneasy weight settle in his chest. Reaching for what? Kayla paused at the entrance of the hallway. The blue glow from the reactor painted the edges of her silhouette in soft light. If it mirrored me once, it may be trying to do it again. Evan stared at the readings. The pulse was unmistakable. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Why now, he asked. We stabilized it. Stabilization does not erase resonance, Kayla said gently. It only quiets it. The deck shuddered again, this time softer, almost apologetic, like a tap to get their attention rather than a warning. Evan grabbed his toolkit, slinging the strap over his shoulder. We need to get back to the core chamber, he said. If something is building up again, we cannot wait. Kayla nodded once and followed him into the narrow hallway. The walls vibrated with a faint, almost musical tone, a soft harmonic that did not belong to any ship system Evan recognized. Do you hear that? He asked. Kayla's expression shifted. It is harmonizing. With what? With me, she said quietly. Evan stopped walking for a brief second, stunned by the simplicity of her answer. You are telling me the core is singing? Kayla did not smile, but her eyes softened. Not singing. Resonating. It is trying to align again. Its pattern is searching for stability it remembers. Evan rubbed his forehead, trying to wrap his mind around it. This is a fusion reactor. It does not have memory. Maybe not the kind you understand, Kayla replied. They reached the final bend before the core chamber. The corridor lights pulsed in slow intervals now, matching the rhythm on Evan's wrist display. Kayla touched the metal wall lightly with her fingers. The glow from the reactors seeped through the cracks, warm but not harsh. It is following me, she said. Evan looked at her, then at the light, then at the projection still flickering on his display. If the core mirrors you again, will it destabilize? Not if I control my output, she said. But if it grows stronger than the containment's limit, it will need guidance. Evan frowned. Guidance from what? From the source of the imprint, Kayla said softly. From me. Evan felt his pulse pick up. What does that mean? Kayla turned to face him fully, the ship's soft glow reflecting in her eyes. It means I may have to step into the containment field to calm it. The hallway felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. That field is not safe, Evan said. Even for you. Sometimes resonance requires contact, she said. Evan shook his head. No, that is too dangerous. Kayla's voice remained calm, steady. Evan, you asked earlier why the core recognized me. The answer is simple. Its energy and mine are compatible in ways your systems did not anticipate. I can stabilize it if I must. The lights pulsed again, brighter this time, as if calling her. Kayla stepped past him, her posture grounded, her expression serene. We need to return to the core chamber, she said. It is waiting. Evan followed, each step heavier than the last, knowing exactly what she meant and fearing exactly what he could not stop. The closer they moved toward the core chamber, the stronger the harmonic vibration became. It pulsed through the metal floor in soft waves, rising and falling like a slow heartbeat that matched Kayla's steps with uncanny precision. Evan felt it under his boots, a gentle thrum that made the air feel warmer, thicker, almost aware. Kayla walked ahead with steady purpose, her posture grounded, her eyes reflecting the faint blue glow leaking from the chamber entrance. It is intensifying, she said quietly. Evan checked his wrist display, watching the secondary waveform rise in amplitude. It is syncing with you again, he said. Stronger than before. It remembers the earlier imprint, Kayla replied. Connections like this rarely break cleanly. They reached the final door, the heavy metal barrier that separated the outer corridor from the core chamber. The glow spilling through the lower seams painted the floor in shimmering shapes, ripples bending and curling as if reaching outward. Kayla placed her palm against the door. The light brightened in response, warm enough that Evan felt the temperature shift even from a few steps away. It is ready, she murmured. Evan swallowed. Ready for what? Stabilization, Kayla said. But not from the outside. It wants resonance, not correction. Evan shook his head. Kayla, if you step into that field, you could be overwhelmed. Only if I resist it, she said softly. Harmony is safest when accepted, not fought. Evan reached forward and gently touched her arm. You do not owe this ship anything. You do not have to do this. Kayla looked at him, her expression calm but sincere. You are wrong, she said. I owe it my life. And yours. Earlier it mirrored me to prevent a failure. It acted on recognition. Now it is calling for balance, and I can give it that. Evan hesitated, searching for an argument strong enough to stop her, but the hum through the floor deepened, settling into a steady rhythm that seemed to wrap around them. The ship felt alive, as if holding its breath. Kayla pressed the manual release, and the heavy door slid open with a gentle hiss. Warm light poured out, softer now, no longer frantic, but welcoming, almost peaceful. The reactor chamber stretched before them, the great cylindrical throat of the core glowing in smooth waves of blue and white. Evan stepped in beside her, shielding his eyes slightly until they adjusted. The energy dancing along the containment field curved in slow arcs, forming faint outlines that shimmered like half-drawn silhouettes. Kayla exhaled, and the light curved with her, following the rhythm of her breath like a reflection cast through air instead of water. Evan felt the hairs on his arms rise. "It really is mirroring you," he said, more clearly than before. Kayla moved calmly toward the edge of the containment railing. "Then we give it the clarity it is seeking." Evan grabbed her elbow gently. "Kayla, once you are inside the field, I cannot pull you out. The energy will be too dense for me to reach you." She met his gaze, her voice steady and quiet. "You will not need to. Resonance is not force. It is guidance." "What if it asks for more than you can give?" Evan asked. "What if it becomes too strong?" Kayla held his stare for a long moment, the reactor glow illuminating the calm determination in her eyes. "Then I trust you to anchor me," she said. Evan felt his breath catch. "How?" "By staying here," she said simply. "By not leaving." The reactor pulsed again, brighter this time, as if acknowledging her words. Kayla stepped up to the containment boundary, the soft light folding toward her like warmth drawn to warmth. She looked back at Evan once, her expression steady. "It is time." Before he could speak, she stepped forward, crossing the threshold of the containment field with slow, deliberate grace as the core welcomed her light with its own. The moment Kayla crossed into the containment field, the chamber shifted. The soft blue glow brightened, but not in warning. It unfolded around her like ripples in warm water, bending gently toward her shape without touching her directly. Evan stood at the threshold, gripping the railing with both hands, his breath locked somewhere between his chest and throat. Kayla moved slowly, each step measured, her posture steady as the energy welcomed her presence. The containment field responded with smooth arcs of light, flowing in calm spirals rather than chaotic bursts. It was not pulling her. It was listening to her. She lifted her hand slightly, and the core mirrored the gesture in a soft echo of light. Evan watched the waveform on his wrist display align instantly with her movement. The secondary pulse that had once been erratic now rose and fell in a perfect, steady rhythm. Kayla closed her eyes for a moment. The light responded in turn, dimming just enough to match the calm exhale from her chest. "It recognizes equilibrium," she said softly, her voice carrying across the chamber. Evan felt the tension in his shoulders ease, though he did not release the railing. "Are you stable?" he called out. "Yes," Kayla said, her tone even, focused. "The core is not resisting. It is synchronizing." The containment field brightened around her in soft layers, folding into a shape that resembled the earlier silhouette, but this time the outline was smoother, less defined, as if the core no longer needed to mimic her exactly. It was simply following her lead. Kayla extended her other hand, guiding her breath in slow, steady cycles. The light pulsed with each inhale, softened with each exhale. "It is releasing the excess energy," she said. "The imbalance is dissipating." Evan checked the readings again. The pressure levels dropped steadily. The temperature curve began its descent toward nominal range. "It is working," he said. "Kayla, it is actually working." A faint smile touched her lips, serene and focused. Harmony often succeeds where force fails. The ship hummed beneath Evan's boots, the gentle vibration almost like gratitude vibrating through the metal. The light around Kayla softened further, losing its sharp edges. The silhouette dissolved into gentle radiance, no longer mirroring her, but blending into the chamber's natural glow. The core recognized her presence, but it was no longer reaching. It was settling. The readings on Evan's gauge leveled out completely. The surge cycle ended. The reactor had calmed. "Kayla," he said quietly, "you can step back. Now. It is stable." She opened her eyes slowly, the containment field's glow reflecting in their clear blue depths. "Yes," she said, almost a whisper. "It is finished." She took one careful step back. The light shifted, not in protest, but in a graceful release, like the final note of a song fading into silence. Another step, and the field softened further. When she crossed the boundary and rejoined Evan on the safe side of the railing, the containment field settled into a calm, steady pulse, its glow no brighter than the soft interior lights of the ship. Evan exhaled a breath he had held for far too long. He did not speak at first. He simply looked at her, illuminated by the gentle light of the reactor she had soothed. Kayla met his gaze with quiet steadiness. Neither of them said anything. They did not need to. The chamber was silent except for the soft, even hum of a reactor at peace, echoing the calm they had created together. In that silence, something unspoken passed between them, as clear as the softened glow that reflected in Kayla's eyes. A recognition, a connection, a moment held in the quiet air, lasting longer than any words could. And the reactor, no longer mirroring her shape, glowed with a warmth that felt almost like understanding.